My 80th birthday was supposed to be a quiet triumph, a celebration of surviving, of enduring, of reaching a milestone my own mother never saw. For 8 decades, I'd navigated joy and grief. But the last 5 years, since Frank left me, were a different kind of journey. One mapped in the silence of an empty house and the slow, careful script of a widow's budget. My granddaughter Chloe had promised me for weeks that she was planning something just for us. A little tenderness, a little recognition after so many years in the background. A reason to feel the sun on my skin again. So, I put on my best dress, the blue one that brought out the flecks in my eyes. I baked her favorite cake, the one her grandfather used to request every year. I waited. But what happened that day didn't just break my heart. It shattered the very lens through which I viewed my own life. Age may have softened my skin, but it has hardened my resolve. And I am done being a footnote in other people's lives. Before I begin, I want to thank you for letting me share this with you. Your listening ears are a balm to a soul that has felt too quiet for too long. If you're listening, please drop a comment and tell me where you're from and what you're doing while you listen. And if you feel moved, please subscribe. It's a quiet act of kindness that helps this old voice carry a little further. Now, let me tell you what really happened. It started with a whisper of hope, a seed planted in the barren soil of my routine. Chloe, my granddaughter, the light of my life since the day I first held her, a squalling, beautiful burden when her own mother had no use for her, came over in early March. She sat right there at my kitchen table, the one her grandfather built from a single oak tree that fell in a storm. Its surface now a topography of our lives, knife scars from holiday dinners, a water ring from a forgotten glass, the faint impression of Chloe's first crayon drawing. She held my hands, her own so young and smooth against my papery skin. "Nana," she said, her eyes shining like they did when she was a little girl with a secret. "For your 80th, we're not just having cake. I'm taking you on a trip. Just you and me. A girls' weekend. No distractions." I felt a flutter in my chest, a feeling so foreign I almost didn't recognize it. Joy. Pure, unadulterated joy. "A trip? Where?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, afraid to scare the moment away. "It's a surprise," she said, squeezing my hands, her touch warm and familiar. "But pack your fancy scarves and that perfume you save for special occasions. The one that smells like gardenias. We're going to make memories, Nana. Real ones. I hadn't left this town since my Frank passed 5 years ago. My world had shrunk to the 4 walls of this house, the predictable aisles of the grocery store, and the well-worn path to his gravesite. The idea of seeing a new horizon, of feeling a different sun on my face with my Chloe. It was a sip of water after a long drought. A week later, she called, her voice bubbly and effervescent, like the champagne we'd toasted with at her wedding. "Nana, I'm booking the hotel and the train tickets. There's a special discount if I pay with a credit card right now. Mine's maxed out from that car repair. Can I just use yours and I'll pay you back in cash as soon as my paycheck clears? I'll bring it over tomorrow." I hesitated for a single fleeting breath. Frank always handled the money. He called me his CEO of Home and Heart, but he was the CFO. After he was gone, the numbers on the statements seemed to swim, a confusing sea of decimals and fees. But this was Chloe, my Chloe. I'd raised her. I'd wiped her tears after skinned knees and broken hearts, helped her with algebra that made my own head spin, pawned my good pearl necklace, the one Frank gave me when we found out we were pregnant with Susan, to pay for her senior class trip to Washington, D.C. Trusting her was as natural as breathing. "Of course, baby," I said, the love in my voice smoothing over any lingering doubt. "It's in my wallet in the kitchen drawer. The number is on the front." She read it back to me. The number's a sterile recitation of a bond I thought was unbreakable. "Perfect. Oh, Nana, you're going to love it. The picture's online. It's all going to be perfect." She said we'd go the first weekend of May, a beautiful blooming time, right after my birthday. When the calendar turned to May and the lilacs by the porch burst into fragrant purple clusters, I asked for the date, my voice tinged with a hopeful excitement I hadn't felt in years. "We're just finalizing a few things, Nana," she'd said. a touch of impatience in her tone. "It'll be worth the wait, I promise. You've taught me patience, remember?" I believed her. The very next day, I went to the department store and bought a new suitcase, a soft lavender one that felt both practical and hopeful, and a beautiful leather-bound journal to write about my adventures. I packed it slowly, carefully, as if performing a sacred ritual. I laid out my good wool coat, even though it was spring, just in case the evenings were cool. I folded my silk scarf, the deep emerald one Frank bought me on our 40th anniversary, the last big trip we ever took. And lastly, I tucked a small, framed photo of him into the side pocket, smiling out at me. So he could come along too. The night before my birthday, my phone rang, its trill slicing through the quiet evening. It was Chloe. She sounded out of breath, like she was walking quickly. "Nana, listen. There's a tiny change of plans." My heart, that hopeful little bird that had been singing in my chest for weeks, stilled. "Oh?" "The trip's just pushed back a week or two. My work schedule is a nightmare. We're swamped. But we're still on. I promise. Cross my heart." "So you'll still come for dinner tomorrow?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be, betraying the fear that was now coiling in my stomach. "Absolutely," she said, and I could almost hear her smiling through the phone, that same disarming smile that had gotten her out of trouble since she was 5. "I wouldn't miss your birthday dinner for the world. I've got a special gift for you." That was enough. I hung up the phone and told myself not to be a foolish, sentimental old woman. Young people are busy. Their lives are a whirlwind of ambition and obligation. Life is complicated. On the morning of my 80th birthday, I woke up with the sun, a faint pink blush on the horizon. I put on Frank's old record player, Nat King Cole's Unforgettable, his favorite. The crackle of the vinyl was a ghostly duet. I made a pot of strong coffee, the way Frank liked it, and started cooking. I made a roast chicken with lemon and rosemary, the way Chloe loves it, the scent filling the house with a sense of occasion. Garlic mashed potatoes, smooth and creamy, green beans with slivered almonds for a little crunch, and from scratch, a rich, dark chocolate cake, her ultimate favorite. I used the good Belgian cocoa, not the store brand, and real butter. I set the table for 3. Me, Chloe, and an empty seat for Frank, out of habit and love. I put out the china with the delicate bluebirds, the set we got for our wedding, each piece a memory of a promise made. I wore the blue dress Frank loved. I put on a little powder and lipstick, tracing the lines of my lips that he had kissed 1,000 times. I lit the vanilla-scented candles I keep for holidays, their warm glow pushing back against the encroaching twilight. The house felt warm and alive and full of love. It felt like a home. By 5 hours, the table was a still life of anticipation. By 6 the food was under foil, staying warm, its aroma now a taunt. By 7, I relit the candles that had burned low. By 8, I stopped looking at the clock, the ticking a metronome for my sinking heart. By 9, the candles were guttered pools of wax, and the silence in the house was a physical presence, thick and suffocating. I sat at the head of the table, alone. The plate across from me was pristine, empty. The chair vacant. I picked up my fork, the silver cool and heavy in my hand, and tried a bite of the chicken. It was perfectly cooked, tender and flavorful, but it tasted like ash in my mouth. I pushed the plate away and folded my hands in my lap, staring at the "Happy Birthday" banner I'd strung up over the fireplace myself, the letters slightly crooked. The glitter seemed to mock me, catching the dying light in cheap, shiny sparks. I cried then. Soft, silent tears that welled up from a deep, dry well and dripped onto the bluebirds on my plate. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep and neglected you forget it exists until it overflows. It was the crying of 8 decades of putting others first, of quiet sacrifices, of a love that asked for so little and received even less. No one called. No one texted. Not a single "Happy Birthday, Nana." The digital silence on my phone was a louder rejection than any slammed door. At 10 sharp, I moved like an automaton. I wrapped the beautiful, uneaten cake in cling film and put the entire feast into the refrigerator, a museum of my own foolishness. I blew out the candles for the last time. the scent of extinguished wicks bitter in the air. I changed into my worn, soft nightgown and sat on the edge of my bed, the springs groaning a familiar complaint. I looked at the lavender suitcase by the door, so full of hope, so ready for an adventure that would never come. It looked like a tombstone for a dream I hadn't even known I still possessed. I turned off the light and lay in the dark, listening to the house settle around me, each creak and groan a reminder of my profound solitude. "She just forgot," I whispered to the darkness, a final desperate plea to the universe. But the part of me that had raised her, that knew the cadence of her lies from the truth, the part that was a mother and a grandmother, knew better. She didn't forget. She just didn't come. The morning after my 80th birthday, the world had lost its color. It was as if a filter had been placed over my eyes, draining the vibrancy from the spring green outside my window, muting the blue of the sky. The house wasn't just quiet, it was hollow, a shell that echoed with the ghost of yesterday's hope. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, my bones feeling heavy and ancient, just looking at that suitcase. The tag was still on, a bright, cheerful string that felt like a lie. A silly, stubborn part of me thought maybe next week it would still happen. Maybe the delay was real. I went through the motions, a ghost in my own life. I brushed my teeth, the mint taste a shock in my numb mouth. I made a cup of tea and let it grow cold on the counter. I opened the fridge, saw the cake, a dark monument behind the glass, and closed it again, my appetite gone. The dishes from last night were still in the sink, a greasy, heartbreaking monument to my foolishness. I couldn't bring myself to touch them. Washing them felt like erasing the last evidence that I had expected someone, that I had believed in something. I sat on the sofa, wrapped in Frank's old cardigan, pulling the worn wool tight around me. It still held a faint, sacred trace of his pipe tobacco, a scent memory that was my only comfort. I listened to the grandfather clock in the hall tick, each second a hammer blow on the anvil of my disappointment. It was past noon. The sun was high, still nothing. The phone was a dead black stone. Then, a knock. 2 soft, hesitant raps. I shuffled to the door, my slippers whispering against the hardwood, and peeked through the lace curtain. It was Leo, the young man who rented the apartment above my garage. A good kid, in his late 20s, quiet, with kind eyes. He was always offering to carry my groceries or mow my lawn, refusing any payment beyond a slice of pie. I opened the door. "Morning, Miss Eleanor," he said, holding out a small brown paper bag. "I was at the pharmacy and saw your heart medicine was ready. Picked it up for you." "Oh, Leo, thank you," I said, my voice raspy from disuse. I stepped back. "Come in, please. You're letting the cool air out." He walked in, his presence immediately making the house feel less like a tomb. He placed the bag on the counter. His eyes, sharp and observant, fell on my tablet, sitting on the kitchen table where I'd left it after trying to look up the weather for my non-existent trip. "Your tablet still acting up?" he asked. "The screen freezing like it was last month?" I nodded, grateful for the mundane topic. "I think I touched something I shouldn't have. It just goes black now, and I can't get it to wake up. I was afraid I broke it." "Let me see," he said, picking it up with a familiar ease. He tapped and swiped for a moment, his brow furrowed in concentration. I busied myself wiping down the already clean counter, just to have something to do with my hands. Then he went very still. His shoulders tensed almost imperceptibly. "Miss Eleanor," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "This trip Chloe was planning for your birthday. Where was it supposed to be?" I turned slowly, the damp cloth still in my hand. "She never said. It was a surprise." "Why?" A cold dread, entirely separate from the morning's grief, began to prickle at the base of my spine. He hesitated, his thumb hovering over the screen. He looked genuinely pained. I probably shouldn't show you this. It's not my place." "Show me what, Leo?" The cold was spreading, icing my veins. Reluctantly, he turned the tablet around. There, in vivid, high-definition color, was a photo of my granddaughter. She was laughing, her head thrown back in, a way that was both beautiful and, in that moment, utterly devastating. She was in a sleek, modern hotel bar, all low lighting and polished wood. She was holding a colorful cocktail adorned with a tiny umbrella. The caption read, "Birthday Detox. Treat yourself. Spa weekend. No regrets. Me time." It was geotagged. At the Serenity Springs Resort and Spa, a place I'd never heard of 2 hours away. It had been posted last night at 8:17 p.m., right around the time I was lighting my candles for the second time. I took the tablet from him. My hands were steady, a miracle of suppressed emotion, but my insides were shaking apart. I scrolled with a numb finger. Another photo of her in a fluffy white robe, a serene smile on her face as a technician smoothed green goo over her forehead. Another of a perfectly seared steak dinner, a glass of red wine beside it. Another of her showing off a new tattoo on her wrist, a small, delicate bird in flight. A bird. The symbol of the freedom she was celebrating without me. Then I zoomed in on the first picture, the one in the bar. On the table next to her cocktail, partly obscured by her clutch purse, was a folded receipt. I squinted, my heart pounding a frantic, painful rhythm in my ears. I could just make out, in the grainy resolution, the last 4 digits of the credit card number printed at the bottom. They were mine. I set the tablet down on the table with a soft, final click. The sound echoed in the silent kitchen. "She told me it was postponed," I whispered, the words ash in my mouth. "She said she was busy with work. She promised she was coming for dinner." Leo just looked at me, his eyes full of a profound, helpless pity that was worse than any anger. It was confirmation. "I'm so sorry, Miss Eleanor. I thought you knew. If I had known—" "It's not your fault, Leo," I said, my voice thin and stretched. "It's mine. For believing the pretty lie." He didn't argue. He didn't try to make excuses for her. He just sat with me in the wreckage of my birthday, his silent solidarity a stark contrast to the family who had left me to drown in it. This boy, who owed me nothing, showed me more kindness and respect in that moment than my own flesh and blood. After he left, the silence that returned was louder, more accusatory. I needed to see it all, to sear the truth into my mind so I could never again be fooled by the fantasy. I turned on my ancient desktop computer, the fan whirring to life like a tired old bee. I logged into my bank's website, the password saved from a time when Frank was alive to manage it all. With trembling fingers, I typed Serenity Springs into the search bar. The first result was a confirmation email from the resort itself, a 2-night stay in the Tranquility Suite, the ultimate rejuvenation package, which included massages, facials, and a private yoga session. All paid in full. Billing address, Eleanor Griggs. Payment method, my credit card. The charge was dated the day she'd asked to lock in the rates. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred and swam together. She didn't just leave me. She stole from me. She took the gift, I thought. She was giving me the gift of her time, of our connection, and gave it to herself. She celebrated my birthday by detoxing from me. The words "no regrets" burned in my vision. I shut the laptop with a definitive thud. The sound was a full stop. I stood up and walked to the hall mirror, the one Frank hung so he could straighten his tie on his way out to face the world. I looked at the woman staring back. Tired eyes, deep sad lines around her mouth, shoulders slumped under the weight of a cardigan that was now a shroud. But deep within her eyes, beneath the grief and the shock, I saw a spark. A tiny, guttering flame that I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't the fire of anger, not yet. It was the clear, cold spark of a long-dormant clarity, the spark of survival. The calm that settled over me after Leo left was not peace. It was the eerie stillness at the eye of a hurricane. The hurt was a deep, aching bruise on my soul, but it was now covered by a layer of clear, cold resolve. I didn't call Chloe. I didn't scream or shout or throw the scented candle she'd brought me against the wall. That would have been a release of emotion, and I had no emotion left to give them. I just stood there, looking at my reflection, and met the gaze of the woman Frank had loved, a woman who was still in there, beneath the wrinkles and the grief. The next day, the phone rang. It was my daughter, Susan. Her voice was like thin, cheap syrup, poured over a bitterness I'd come to know well. "Happy belated birthday, Mom," she chirped, the false cheer making my teeth ache. "So sorry we missed you. Chloe said she tried to stop by, but you weren't feeling well. A migraine, was it?" The lie was so effortless, so rehearsed, it stole the air from my lungs. They had a narrative, and I was just a character in their story of convenience. "I was feeling fine," I said, my voice flat and devoid of the warmth she expected. "I was waiting." There was a pause on the other end, a flicker of uncertainty. "Well, she's going to pop by later to drop off your gift. She felt just awful about it." "All right," I said, and hung up before she could weave another thread into their tapestry of falsehoods. Sure enough, Chloe came that evening. She let herself in with the key I'd given her years ago, a token of trust she no longer deserved. I was in the living room, darning a sock under the lamplight, a useless, comforting habit from a time when things were built to be repaired, not replaced. "Nana," she chirped, leaning down to kiss my cheek. She smelled of expensive hotel shampoo and a new, cloying perfume that smothered the familiar scent of my girl. "I brought you this." She placed a small, gift-wrapped box on the coffee table, right on top of the ring Frank's coffee mug had left years ago. I put down my darning egg, the smooth wood a comfort in my hand. "What is it?" "Open it," she urged, her eyes wide with a performance of excitement. Slowly, I untied the ribbon and peeled back the paper. Inside was a cheap glass jar candle from a drugstore. "Lavender Fields," the label proclaimed in swirly font. It smelled artificial, like a room they're trying to sell you, not a field you'd ever walk in. I looked from the candle to her face, which was already beginning to harden under my scrutiny. "This what you brought back from the spa?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Her smile didn't so much fade as it imploded. "What?" "I saw the photos, Chloe. The resort, the spa, the new tattoo, the steak dinner." I kept my voice low even, each word a carefully placed stone. "You paid for it with my money. The money for our trip." She had the decency to blush, a faint wash of pink that only highlighted her guilt. "Oh, that. Nana, that was a work thing, a last-minute retreat. I used your card by accident. I meant to use mine. I'll pay you back, I swear. Next week." "You told me the trip for us was postponed," I said, standing up slowly, my joints protesting. "You looked me in the eye and you lied to me." She threw her hands up, a gesture of theatrical exasperation I knew well. It wasn't a lie. I just repurposed the funds. It was a stressful time, and you wouldn't have enjoyed it anyway. All those young people, the noise, the fancy food. You always say you get tired, that you like your own bed. I took a step toward her. My voice was still calm, but I could feel the ice cracking, revealing the fire of a lifetime of slights beneath. "You used my credit card, Chloe. You booked a vacation for one on my 80th birthday and left me here with a cold chicken and a heart so full of hope it near burst. And you have the audacity to tell me what I would and wouldn't enjoy?" She rolled her eyes, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times, but that now felt like a shard of glass in my heart. "God, Nana, you're so dramatic. It was just a mix-up. A misunderstanding. It's not like you were going to do anything anyway. You never do. You just sit in this house." Dramatic. She had taken my money, my birthday, my trust, and I was the one being dramatic. The word echoed in the quiet room, each syllable a hammer blow. I thought of the countless nights I'd spent rocking her to sleep when she had colic, her tiny, feverish body pressed against mine. The years I spent driving her to school and ballet when her mother couldn't be bothered. The college fund I'd secretly, painstakingly siphoned from my own meager social security to give her a start, a fact I had never told her, wanting the gift to be free of the weight of gratitude. I thought of her at 10 years old, her small hand in mine, telling me I was her best friend in the whole wide world. And now she stood in my living room, in the house where I'd built a life, telling me my pain was an inconvenience, my existence too small to matter. I walked to the mantelpiece, my steps slow and deliberate. I picked up a small silver-framed photo of her and Frank, taken at a county fair. He was holding her on his shoulders, and she was laughing, a cloud of cotton candy in her hand. I traced the glass over his smiling face. "You can go now, Chloe." "What? Nana, don't be like this. It's a candle." I said I was sorry. "I need to sweep," I said, my voice soft but final, like a judge's gavel. "And I don't like dirt in my house." She stared at me, her mouth a tight, petulant line. For a second, I saw the ghost of the little girl she used to be, confused and on the verge of a tantrum. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold, entitled young woman she had become. She snatched her purse from the sofa, the strap catching on the afghan I'd knitted for her. She didn't bother to untangle it gently, just yanked it free. "Fine," she spat. "Be alone then." She left, slamming the door so hard the windows in the front room rattled. The sound echoed through the house, a violent period at the end of our story. That night, I sat on the porch in Frank's old rocking chair. I didn't cry. The well was dry. I just let the twilight settle around me, a blanket of quiet understanding. The crickets began their nightly chorus, a sound Frank had loved. I still loved my granddaughter, but I could no longer ignore the person she had become, the person her mother was, the person David, her husband, had encouraged her to be. I thought that was the end of it. A painful lesson, a closed chapter. But the story wasn't over. The real storm, the one that would wash everything clean, was still on the horizon. The trouble started not with a bang, but with a drip, a slow, insistent plink. Plink. Plink in the hallway closet after a heavy spring rain. When I moved the boxes, I saw it, a dark, spreading stain on the ceiling, a blossom of decay. The plumber, a kind man with grease under his fingernails, gave me an estimate for repiping the whole house that made my head spin and my stomach clench. My small pension and Social Security, carefully budgeted for groceries and utilities, wouldn't cover it. For the first time since Frank died, I felt a cold, sharp spike of genuine financial fear. This wasn't about hurt feelings. This was about my home. I was proud, but I wasn't foolish. I needed help. Leo, bless him, had mentioned a woman at the local senior center, a retired financial advisor named Beatrice Croft, who volunteered her time to help people like me sort out their paperwork. "She's a pit bull in pearls," he'd said with a respectful smile. "She doesn't suffer fools and she'll get you straight. She'll see right through any nonsense." I called, my voice trembling slightly as I left a message. She called back within the hour, her voice crisp and efficient. She came over the next day, a small, bird-like woman in her 70s with a sleek silver bob and a fierce, uncompromising intelligence in her eyes. She wore a simple linen dress and carried a sleek leather briefcase that looked both expensive and utterly out of place in my humble living room. When she shook my hand, her grip was surprisingly strong, a vice of quiet capability. "Eleanor," she said, getting straight to business, her gaze already taking inventory of the room, of me. "Leo said you're having some cash flow issues. Let's see what we're working with. Lay it all out for me." I explained about the roof, the pipes, the estimate that felt like a death sentence. "I just need to see if I can get a small loan," I finished, wringing my hand slightly. "I have savings, an investment account, but my grandson-in-law, David, He's been helping me manage it. He said it's best left in long-term investments, that I shouldn't worry my head about it. Beatrice set her briefcase on the coffee table with a definitive click. And how involved are you in these long-term investments? He has the login information, I admitted, feeling a hot flush of shame creep up my neck. He handles the paper statements, says it's all too complicated for me, all that financial jargon. Beatrice's lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. Eleanor, let me be perfectly clear. Nothing about your own money is too complicated for you. That is a line used by people who do not have your best interests at heart. Now, she said, opening her briefcase and pulling out a sleek laptop. Let's take a look right now, together. With her guiding me, her fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced ease, I logged into my investment account. The screen was a confusing array of graphs, ticker symbols, and numbers that seemed to have no relation to the life Frank and I had built. Beatrice scanned it, her eyes moving rapidly back and forth, her expression growing grimmer with each passing second. She didn't speak for a full minute. The only sound in the room was the hum of the computer and the frantic beating of my own heart. When she finally turned to me, her expression was not one of anger, but of a deep, weary sadness. Eleanor, she said, her voice gentler now. There have been a series of substantial withdrawals over the last 18 months, several $1,000s. All of it transferred to an external account under the name David and Chloe Miller. I felt the blood drain from my face, a cold wave of nausea washing over me. That must be for the financial advising, the fees. David said he was reinvesting it for a higher yield, a more aggressive portfolio. Beatrice pointed a perfectly manicured finger at a specific line on the screen. This transfer dated last October is labeled Vehicle Down Payment. This one from December, Home Theater System. And this one, she said, her voice dropping, from last month is a direct payment to a luxury watch retailer, a Rolex by the look of the merchant code. She looked me dead in the eye, her gaze unwavering. This isn't management, Eleanor. This is theft. Systematic, premeditated theft. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and final. Theft. My throat closed up. The room seemed to tilt. He's family, I whispered, the defense a pathetic automatic reflex. He's under pressure. He's trying to provide for Chloe to keep up appearances. Eleanor, Beatrice said, her voice firm yet not unkind. You are not an ATM. You are a person. You worked for this. Frank worked for this. It is not their personal slush fund to finance a lifestyle they haven't earned. I looked down at my hands. At the thin gold wedding band I still wore, a symbol of a partnership built on trust and mutual sacrifice. I thought of all the years Frank and I had scrimped and saved. The vacations we didn't take, the new furniture we went without, the careful budgeting to build this safety net for our old age. For my old age. And they were spending it on surround sound and wristwatches while my roof leaked and my pipes threatened to burst. They were living our retirement. I don't want to cause trouble, I whispered, the old tired refrain of a peacemaker, of a woman who had always put family harmony above her own needs. The trouble has already been caused, Beatrice replied, closing her laptop with a soft but definitive thud. The question is, are you ready to stop being a victim of it? I didn't answer her that day. The truth was too large, too terrifying to hold. She left me her card and a folder of information about my legal rights and power of attorney revocation. I needed to sit in the silence, to feel the full, crushing weight of the betrayal. It wasn't just a spa weekend anymore. It was my past, my present, and my future. I thought of Chloe's spa weekend, paid for with my stolen trip, and now this. It wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was a pattern, a sickness. They saw me not as a mother, a grandmother, but as a resource to be depleted, a vessel whose contents they were entitled to. The final straw, the one that broke the back of my denial, came the following week. David himself showed up at my door, Chloe trailing nervously behind him like a scolded puppy. He didn't bother with a greeting, didn't ask how I was. He marched into my living room as if he owned it, his presence immediately making the space feel small and threatened. "Eleanor," he said, his voice booming in the quiet room. "We found the perfect investment property. A duplex on the south side. It's a gold mine. We need $50,000 for the down payment to secure it before it's gone. It's just sitting in your investment account, losing value to inflation. It's the smartest move for the family. It's an asset." I looked at him, at his smug, entitled face, then at Chloe, who studied a loose thread on her sweater, unable to meet my eyes. He was talking about my money, my security, my legacy, with such a breathtaking sense of ownership it stole the air from my lungs. He wasn't asking. He was informing me of a transaction. "I don't have $50,000 to give you," I said, my voice quiet but clear in the tense room. "Of course you do," he scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Don't be naive. You're just being selfish, hoarding it, after everything we've done for you." "What have you done for me, David?" I asked, the ice in my voice surprising even me. I stood up, feeling a strength I didn't know I possessed straighten my spine. "Besides help yourselves to my savings?" His face darkened, a storm cloud of indignation. "We manage your finances. We deal with the stress, the paperwork, the complicated decisions so you don't have to. It's a burden, Eleanor." "You mean you steal from me?" I said, taking a step toward him. "I've seen the statements, David. The car down payment, the Rolex, the home theater system. You and my granddaughter have been bleeding me dry while you told me to not worry my pretty little head." Chloe finally spoke, her voice a reedy whine. "Nana, it's not like that. We were going to pay it back when the duplex started making money." "When?" I snapped, turning my full gaze to her, the weight of 81 years of love and disappointment behind it. "Tell me, Chloe. Explain to me how you using my money for a spa weekend while you stood me up on my 80th birthday is anything but theft and cruelty. Explain how a new watch for your husband helps me sleep at night while my roof leaks." David stepped between us, his bulk a physical barrier. "You do this and you'll be all alone. You'll have no one. Don't come crying to us when you fall and break a hip or when you can't figure out your taxes." The threat, naked and cold, hung in the air. It was the weapon they had always held over me, the threat of abandonment. But now, after the silence of my birthday, it had no power. I walked to the side table, picked up Beatrice's crisp, white business card, and held it out to him. "I already have," I said. The color drained from his face. He looked from the card to my face, and for the first time he saw not a malleable old woman, but an opponent. He grabbed Chloe's arm, his grip surely leaving bruises. "Let's go. She's lost her mind. She's chosen strangers over her own family." They stormed out. The slam of the door was a cannon shot, a sound of finality. I stood there trembling, but not from fear, from a surge of righteous power I hadn't felt in years. It was clean and sharp and true. I picked up the phone, my hand steady as a rock. "Beatrice?" I said, my voice clear and strong, echoing in the house that was, once again, truly mine. "Let's get started."